Welcome everyone. We're so glad you're joining us this morning for our Creativity and Artwork Canvas webinar. I want to give just a few minutes for people to continue to log on here, but while we do that, I'm going to launch a poll from Debbie. How familiar are you with the tools in Artwork Canvas? So if you just select an answer there, it'll submit to me. Don't worry, no one's keeping a tally here, but it does give us an idea of where everyone's at today. I do have a couple of announcements too before I turn it over to our instructor. If you are having issues with anything today or the webinar just doesn't seem to be working properly, go ahead and close out of the program, rejoin using the join webinar link in your email, and those issues should clear up. If you look to the right of your screen, you should see a handouts tab in the control panel. If you don't see the control panel, there might be like a red arrow in the top right hand corner of your screen. Click on that to expand the control panel, and in there you'll see those handouts. Those are downloads from our instructor. You can download those and they'll save to your computer and you can have those afterwards. If you can't find them, don't worry, this webinar is being recorded and that recording in those handouts will be posted to BERNINA.com in just a couple of days. It does take a little bit of time for that turnaround. Also in the control panel, you will see a questions tab. So anytime throughout the presentation, if there's some question that you might be pondering or need an answer to, go ahead and post it in there and we will do our best to get them answered. If not, no worries. You do have our emails that you can email us those questions. I also want to make aware that this presentation is in a lecture mode, so we don't have the intention of you to follow along with the instructor throughout the presentation today. We want you to take notes here in the first part of it and just listen to the instructor and then take those notes in the recording later and work through the program with it. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here. And Debbie, you have a pretty good range here. Only about 1% of attendees are extremely familiar with Artwork Canvas, 7% are very familiar, 47% are somewhat familiar, and then 44% are not at all familiar. So,
okay, great. Thank you.
All right, but yes, I'd now like to introduce our instructor for today. We have with us BERNINA educator Debbi Lashbrook.
Thank you, Megan, and welcome everyone. I love Artwork Canvas. I have for a long, long time. It gives us a lot of different options for doing things that are either easier than they would be if we manually digitize them, or we can do things that we cannot do in the embroidery side of the canvas. Now, you do have you have a CMX file that is needed for the exercise that will be posted along with the handouts on the website when the webinar is posted. So there are many shapes tools in Artwork Canvas, and this is one of the easiest ways to create a heart, a star, an arc, or a ring. And these many shapes can then be converted to embroidery, and you can fill them, you can use them for outlines, you can create pattern stamps with them, and you can create monogram borders as well. You can also take a simple spiral shape, and through making duplicates, you can create a ring, and then once it's converted into embroidery, there are going to be lots of jump stitches, but we have a tool called Blackwork Run, and that allows you to activate the Blackwork Run. You click on enter and it takes care of all the jump stitches. So the software finds a way to create this spiral without a jump stitch. We also can reshape those shapes, and through the reshape vector object in Artwork Canvas, we can create some fractured, I call them fractured stars, that aren't easily created in the embroidery canvas. We also have a combine tool that lets you create shapes such as you see here on the screen. Then there are many drawing and editing tools in Artwork Canvas, and we can create the shapes. We can then reshape those shapes and then create the wreath flower that you see on the right of the screen. We also have weld, intersect, and trim tools, so we can make intersecting shapes that look like they weave in and out of one another. We can also intersect a pattern onto a shape. And through the contour tool, we can create layers of objects, and we can use this for lettering as well as shapes. And then there's my favorite tool, the blending tool. The blending tool lets us take two shapes or two lines and create a number of repeats in between these lines. And the focus of today's lesson is on the blending tool. You can just do so many things with the blending tool. And this is another project that has been created with the blending tool. Also with the blending tool, you can create grid quilting. And then there's all sorts of things that you can do with lettering as well. You can put lettering in a spiral. You can create multicolored lettering, as you see here. You can intersect a special pattern on a letter, and this is created with the contour tool. We also have a tool in Artwork Canvas called the Smart Fill, and here we can take a shape and fill those intersecting shapes with color, with individual colors. And so it makes it a really quick and easy way to fill in a coloring book design, for example. Then we also have lots of printed effects. We can add embroidery then for emphasis on these printed shapes. And all sorts of mixed media possibilities where we're taking printed fabric and then applying embroidery. And here's some more mixed media projects where you can combine pictures on and then add embroidery touches as well. And this is today's project, and we're going to focus on quilting with Artwork Canvas. And again, I mentioned the blending tool. Before we get on to the lesson, I want to go ahead and tell you how this was stitched out. I did stitch it on silk dupioni, and I backed the silk with a knit fusible. I happen to love French fuse interfacing, and this is what I usually back my silk projects with. Then the silk is laid over batting, and I used a cotton backing. And when you're using batting, no additional stabilizer is needed for these quilted designs. I did use balance tension, and I used the isocord thread on the back as well as the top. And here's the finished project. I also want to let you know, for those of you who are not really familiar with Artwork Canvas, I will be offering an Introduction to Artwork Canvas, an online class, and this is a hands-on class, and that is going to be February 16th and 17th. It's a 2-day class, but it's actually only a half a day on each class. So there will be an AM session and there will be a PM session. You can look for that advertised on the website. Okay, so the first thing that you will do is open up your embroidery software and then switch to Artwork Canvas. Now, there are 3 different CMX files that will be posted on the website, and one of these is for the jumbo hoop, one of them is for the maxi hoop, and then one of them is for the mega hoop. So depending on your machine, you'll choose the proper CMX file. That way you can make the largest embroidery design possible for your machine. So I'm going to click on Insert Artwork, and I put my CMX files on my desktop. Wrong folder. I just have the CMX jumbo because that's what I'm going to demonstrate with. I'm going to click on import, and whenever you click on import, you always need to remember to press enter. Otherwise, the object is not really there. With everything selected, I am going to rotate this 90 degrees and press enter. And then while it is all selected, I'm going to come over here to Object Manager, and you can see everything is selected in Object Manager. I'm going to right click, and I am going to group the objects, and then I am going to right click and lock the objects. And you can see that a lock appears around the CMX file. This is done so that you won't accidentally move this, and it is serving in the background as you create your design. So the first thing we're going to do is called spiral quilting, and the spiral tool is located, it's a shape, and it's housed with the vector rectangle tool. And if I click and hold on this tool, I can come over and I can grab the spiral tool. And you'll notice that my mouse now has a spiral attached. And to draw, I just click and drag the spiral into the upper left corner. Now we're going to reshape this and distort this a little bit. So I'm going to select the pick tool and then select reshape vector object. And you have various control points, and I'm zooming in with my mouse wheel. And by clicking and dragging on these control points, I can change the shape of this spiral. And I'm just moving these points to distort the shape, kind of filling out the area. So after you get it reshaped, select the pick tool again, and then while it's selected, click on Convert Artwork to Embroidery. So this is taking that vector object and converting it into an embroidery design. Now I'm going to right-click on the triple stitch, and that is an easy way to open up object properties. I want to increase the stitch length. I don't want it so tight, so I'm going to change it to 3 and click OK. And then you can change the color now, or you can change it later. Then you are going to return to Artwork Canvas. And now when we return to Artwork Canvas, that spiral is going to be shown, but it cannot be selected because it's now an embroidery object. The next thing we're going to do is select the polygon tool. So again, I'll click and hold on the visible tool, and you'll notice that the spiral tool is now shown. Whenever you select a new tool in Artwork Canvas, the default tool is going to be replaced by that new tool. And I'm going to select the vector polygon. And in the property bar, I'm going to select the number of sides, and I'm going to draw a triangle. So I'm going to decrease that to 3. And I'm going to draw 2 triangles, one kind of down here in the corner, and then one on the other side. And of course, I can select the pick tool and reshape these. I can move them, I can rotate them. To kind of fill out this area. Now the blend tool connects 2 objects and creates repeats in between these objects. The blend tool is underneath the crop tool. And when I select this, again, my mouse shows what tool I have selected. And I'm going to hold down the Alt key and draw a curved line between the 2 objects. And you can see that it populates now with repeats in between. In the property bar, and the property bar changes with every tool that you have selected. And I can change the number of blends by clicking on the down arrow. And it will kind of depend on the size that you're using, but I decreased my number of triangles to 14. Now that is the number of triangles in between the 2 shapes. So I actually have 16 shapes when I choose 14. And I'm going to select the pick tool, and all of these shapes are selected right now. And I can move these. I could also rotate them. I can skew them, but I want to get them kind of fit within this area. Now, if you want to move the separate rectangles, I can select the two end rectangles independently, but I said rectangles, triangles, but I can move these separately by just clicking on it and moving it. And I can use my arrow keys on my keyboard as well. So if I want to move the triangles in the middle, however, these are all grouped. So I would need to select these and right click and break the blend apart. And then I can ungroup all objects. And that gives me free rein now to move these as I want individually. So if you want to do any moving individually, you're first going to break the blend group apart, and then you're going to ungroup all objects. And you can move, you can rotate, you can do whatever to these blended objects. Now, once they're broken apart, we're going to drag a bounding box around them, and then again, click on Convert. This time I'm going to use a back stitch. And again, the quickest way to open up object properties so that you can change those is to right click on a stitch type in your color and stitch toolbar. So I'm going to right click, and here I'm going to change the back stitch length to 3.5 and click OK. Now, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and save this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Save, and I will navigate to my webinar file, and I'm going to call this Artwork Canvas Quilt. And I'll name this Quilt 1 and click on Save. That way, if something happens, I at least have this much saved and I don't have to go back and start from scratch. Now we're going to return to Artwork Canvas again. And this time you're going to learn how to use the pen tool if you've not ever used it. And we're going to work in this area of the candle mat. So the pen tool is with the freehand draw. So I'll click and hold on the freehand draw tool and select the pen tool. And we're going to draw two straight lines. Now to draw a straight line, it's left clicks. And if I hold down the shift key, it will keep the line on plane. So I'm going to hold down the shift key. I've got my mouse released. I'm not trying to click and drag. I release the mouse, hold down the shift key, drag, then go to a new point and click. And then I can press the space bar to end that line. Now I'll draw another line over on this side, and the pen tool is still selected, so I can click. Looks like I'm going to have to reselect it anyway. I'm going to click, hold the shift key down, click again, and press the space bar to select that. Now I'll select the blend tool, and I'm going to blend these lines. So I'll click and drag, and sometimes the blend tool is a little bit quirky and you have to just keep trying because there's a sweet spot that will add those lines. So just remember, don't give up. It will populate. So we've drawn our blend. Now again, I'm going to go to property bar and I'm going to decrease the number of lines. And this time I'm going to go all the way down to 5. Now you can use the up and down arrows, or I could swipe across and enter the number and then press enter. Now I'm going to select the blend with selecting the pick tool will select that blend, and I'm going to copy and paste. That puts a copy right on top. And in order to rotate, I'm going to select that blend again, and I have rotate handles, and I'm going to rotate this around so that it's horizontal. Now in Object Manager, and Object Manager is a lot like color film. It will give you an easy way to select things. And so right now what we want to do is select the blend group and right click and break the blend apart. Now, when that is done, I now have access to my mirror tools, and I'm going to mirror those vertically. And you can move the copies again if you want, or you can wait until after they are converted into embroidery and then change them. But we're going to use the distort tool, and I'm going to distort the entire, well, both blends. So I'm going to draw a bounding box around everything. And this distort tool is with the blend tool. If I click and hold, this is the distort tool. And there are some presets, and we're going to use the pull corner one. Each one will do a little bit different thing. And then with these selected, I can change the amount of the distortion, and I'm going to enter 75 and press enter. And that activates the change. Now I can resize, I can rotate, I can skew, and it's okay if some of those lines are outside because they can always be resized and reshaped in the embroidery canvas. But if I do want to, that's why we have undo. If I do want to select it, select the pick tool first, drag a box around it, and then you can rotate. And then I'm just going to leave these lines outside. I will change them later. Now in my object manager, and this happened to me when I was working on this lesson, it's like as part of my object manager went away for a while. But here is where I want to break the blend group apart. And so I'm going to right click and break the blend, and then I'm going to also select these, and when I click on that, you can see I've got a curve with distortion added. I've got a group of 5 objects. This curve is one of the end objects. This curve is the end of the copied object that has distortion applied. Then I have my group of 5 objects, and I have the curve. I want to select all of those to convert. So I can either hold down the control key, and it's easy then to select these in Object Manager. And now I will click on Convert. And you can see what happens when I don't ungroup it. And so I'm going to undo again. And this time I'll open up Object Properties, and I want to convert to curves. I have a lot of people ask me, how do you know when to convert to curves? I just showed you how. When something doesn't occur the way I want it to, convert to curve is my go-to. So I'm going to click on this group of objects, and I am going to convert to curves. These are already curves, but I'm going to do that as well. And I found that I had to use that convert to curves, that one I already did, in order for the blend not to end up with straight lines. So now that I've converted all those to curves, I'll draw a bounding box around the design again and click on Convert. And you'll see now I do have all curved lines and no straight lines. So if ever you're experimenting in Artwork Canvas and something like that happens, that's why we have undo. Just try Convert to curves, because it really can make a difference. Now with this, I'm going to change it to a triple stitch. I'm going to right click again because I'm going to change the stitch length. I want to lengthen that to a 3, and I'll click OK. And then if you wish, while this is all selected, you can right click and you can group this on the embroidery side. And I could do the same with this. It's going to make it a little bit easier to do some things. And this, of course, does not have to be grouped. So the next thing I'll do is return to artwork canvas again, and you can see how you can toggle back and forth. And we're going to use the pen tool again, but this time we're not going to draw straight lines. We're going to draw a curved line. And drawing a curved line is done with a click and drag. And so you're holding down the mouse when you want to curve. So I'm going to click and then I'm going to drag. And you can see I've got handles attached to my mouse. So I can then curve the line. And so I click and drag and go to a new area, click and drag. And so I'm setting this curve as I draw the line. When I'm done, I'll press the space bar. And now I'm going to draw another curve, kind of going the opposite way. So pen tool again. And here I'll start over here. And again, it's a click and a drag, click and a drag, click and a drag. And I'll draw my line. Again, pressing the space bar to end. Now you can see I've got some things up here that are not going to work. So that's where our reshape comes into play. So I'm going to select the reshape tool and I can delete a point and I can move a point if I want. I can change the control handles and move those, because sometimes it's a little bit hard to draw the curve that you want, but you certainly can reshape that curve. And notice how the curve gets bigger if I extend the arrows. So dive in and just play with some of these tools. Now, if I want to add a point, I can right click and add, and that'll give me another control point to reshape. And I can smooth out my curve here a little bit by moving the control handles. So once you get your shape, we're going to go back to the blend tool. And then I'm going to click the blend tool is the first tool. I'm going to click on one line. And this has happened to me before too. So what I did was go over to the embroidery canvas. Everything that happened to me when I set this design up is happening again. So I went over to the embroidery canvas and came back up over to artwork canvas, and that seemed to wake things up. So we'll see if it works this time. Okay, let me go back over and I'm going to save the design. And actually I can go File, Save As, and call this Artwork Canvas 2, which is, that way you have different levels of it. And I may have to close down my software if this doesn't work this time and then reopen it. And that's what I'm going to do. So bear with me a minute. I've got the design saved. And it could be with the PowerPoint open, being online, that's causing a little bit of difficulty. It's like I couldn't select anything and my software just froze. So we'll start it back up here.
Debbie, do you want to answer a few questions while we're waiting for it to open? Or?
Sure,
Okay.
that'd be great.
A couple of people have asked in that design, what is the rectangle in the background?
Oh, that's going to be, that's the guideline for the size of the mat.
Okay, perfect. That's what I assumed. And then do you make a drawing beforehand or do you just start inventing designs in the program?
And I usually start with the drawn lines in the background. So that CMX file is what I drew in Artwork Canvas to create.
And then someone did ask, what is a CMX file?
It is the default format for Artwork Canvas for CorelDRAW. So it is a vector file, not a bitmap file.
Okay. And are you good to go?
I don't know. We'll see. It looks like it's selecting things, but go ahead. I can answer another question.
How do you know when to click the spacebar and when to click enter? Is there a specific rule in software for this?
When I use enter, it's usually because I swiped across a value and then I need to press enter to make it activated. If I use the up and down arrow keys, there's not a need to do this or to do that. So it looks like I'm going to have to just delete these lines and do it again.
Sure.
Because it's not even selecting those lines. All right. So I'm just going to use those in the background, and I will just go ahead and select my pen tool and draw again. I'm not trying to draw over them. I'm just drawing a line. And I don't know if I can, maybe I can delete those. Yeah, that'll help. All right, now I've got them out of the background. For some reason, I could not select them, so we'll do this part over. It never hurts to review, right? Okay, and then the other line, again with the pen tool. And I really had to do these lines a lot of different ways before I had something that I liked. But I found that crossing them over like this made a really neat effect. So keep that in mind. You don't really have a guideline to follow. And I also, on one end, I kept it fairly close together. And then the other end, I kind of spread it out. And I found that that was kind of a nice effect. But you can change these in any way that you want. All right, let's try this again. So I'm going to select the blend tool. There. That's the way it's supposed to work. All right, so I'm going to select that blend group and I'm going to click on convert. Now here, there's quite a few lines, and I could have changed the lines in the artwork canvas, but I can also, and I wanted to show you this, you can also delete lines here. So either way, and here you can do them randomly, whereas when you do them in artwork canvas, they're going to be even. So if you want them done even, do them in artwork canvas. If you want them to be kind of an uneven arrangement, then you can do them in embroidery canvas. Now, I'm going to select all these objects in color film, and I'm holding, I selected the first one in color film. I'm holding down the shift key and selecting the last one. And I want to change the color of those. And I've got two of them up here, so I'm going to hold down the control key and select those as well and change those to the same color. That's going to make it easier a little bit later. Now I can select all of these And I'm going to turn this into a back stitch again and increase the stitch length to 3.5 and click OK. And back to Artwork Canvas. So here we're going to do something called stacked shapes, and I'm going to again make a triangle, but this time I'm going to use the pen tool to do that. That way I can get into the corners. So when you're thinking about your designs, think about, do you want it even? Because the triangle tool or the polygon tool changed to a triangle will make an even triangle. Here I want a triangle that is not necessarily shaped evenly, and I can make it angled as well. And I'm just doing left clicks, releasing the mouse, and I'm going to come back over, and when I see the word node, I'm going to click on that and I have an enclosed shape. So I'll select the pick tool. I'm going to copy and paste, and if I select and hold down the shift key, I can resize that to a smaller triangle, and then I can move it within the shape. And now we're going to blend this. And with this, I'm going to decrease the number of blends again. And here, if I swipe across the 20 and enter 5 and press enter, I now have my triangles. I'll select the pick tool, and I want to make sure that I have all these selected. And it's when you're dragging your bounding box, it's not going to select the embroidery. It's not going to select this vector image in the background because we have it locked. And then I'll convert again. And this, I'm going to do a triple stitch, again, changing it to 3, and click apply or OK. And while it's selected again, I can change the color. And it's just going to make it easier a little bit later to select all these objects if you change the color. Now let's go back over to Artwork Canvas one more time. We have one more segment, and here we're going to learn about reshaping. And I'll select the vector polygon again, and I'm going to use 5 sides. That's the default amount, and I'm going to draw a pentagon in this. And if you hold down the control key, that's going to draw an even-sided pentagon. If you just draw without, it will not be necessarily even side. Now, go ahead and move it kind of in the center of all this, and I'm going to select it. And I am going to click on Reshape, and I'm going to take one of the corner points and drag it across to the opposite side. And I can rotate this as I do it. And when I release, I've got a new shape. I'm going to select that shape and copy and paste and rotate. Now I can select this entire shape and move it around. I could also change the size of it. So any of those kind of moving, reshaping, I could even skew this if I wanted to. That can still be done. Just be careful and make sure you have the entire shape selected. And that is, again, one of the reasons I had you lock the background is if you're drawing a bounding box, then you'd have to be careful about selecting the background. And if it's locked, it's not going to let you select it. So now we're going to select that and click on Convert again. And I know that I'm popping back and forth between Embroidery Canvas and Artwork Canvas a lot, but it's easier to drag your box around the shapes when you're not dealing with all vectors on the Artwork Canvas side and all embroidery designs on the embroidery canvas. It kind of keeps them separated so you can make it easier to select them. Now what we're going to do here with this one is I'm going to, I can't remember whether I did single or back stitch with this. It doesn't really matter. Let's just change it to a single, change it to a 3-stitch length, and click on OK. And then while it is selected, I want to change colors. And I want each of these, and this was grouped, so I can select this easy enough and change to a different color. And I can change this to a different color. That way I have individual colors in color film. So let's go ahead and we're going to select each one of these shapes except for the spiral. And if I switch to design mode or design view, and that I did that by pressing the T on the keyboard, I have a lot of jump stitches, a lot of trims and cuts. Remember the triangles and the circles are tie-offs and trims. So there's a lot going on here. So what I want to do is make sure that I activate Blackwork Run with each one of these. So I'm going to select everything but the spiral. The spiral doesn't need that. Before I apply this, though, I want to have the background in place because we are actually going to quilt the background as well. So I'm going to go back over to Artwork Canvas, first of all, to process the CMX file now. And if I open up my object manager, you can see I have a locked group of 6 objects and the rest of it's embroidery. So if I select that with a left click and then right click on it, I can unlock those objects and they are selected as a group. And now I can convert those into embroidery. And I can change the type of stitch if I want to do a triple, for example, and change the stitch length and click OK. So I still have a lot of jumps to contend with. You can see all the jumps and trims. And I do want to select my background, and I'll go to the Edit toolbox, select Blackwork Run, and press Enter. And while this is selected, I'm going to go ahead and move that to Start because I want that to stitch first. The spiral does not have to have Blackwork Run because it can stitch continuously. Now here, I may want to do a little bit of editing here, and I did in mine, and right now I have it grouped. So if I want to edit, I'm going to have to ungroup it. And I ended up deleting some of these triangles. And so you can select them and delete them. You can still move them. The only thing that you want to be sure that they all at least touch. Otherwise, Blackwork Run will not eliminate all the jump stitches. So you could resize them, you could rotate them, you can change them in many different ways. But if you want to do any kind of editing like that, do it before you apply Blackwork Run. So I'll select them in color film because that's the easiest way now to get them all selected. I'll go to Blackwork Run and I'll press Enter. And then working my way down, I've got my next object. And here I do need to do some reshaping because I don't want those stitches to go into the other area. So it is grouped right now. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to ungroup it. And now I can select those individually and I can reshape. So I can delete points by selecting it and pressing delete. I can move points. I can add points. I could change points. But the idea is to get those arranged the way you would like them to be arranged in your within the confines of the border that's around these. So I distorted them even more in my final design through Reshape. And I'm going to have to move this one instead of deleting it. And remember, when you apply Blackwork Run, you don't have to worry about starts and stops for these individual pieces, because the software is going to figure that all out for you. And I also want to change this. I'm going to delete a point to make it smoother. And once it's all in the confines of that area, the easiest way is to select it again in color film and click on Blackwork Run and press enter. Moving down to the next spiral, I select it in color film, click on Blackwork Run, press enter. Now, when you press enter with Blackwork Run, you're telling the software, I want you to figure out where to start and stop this design. You can also click on a specific spot. Now, for these green triangles here, there would be tie-offs and jumps if you didn't do something with these. So these are grouped. No, I haven't grouped them. So I can select these individually. And what I did was I moved some of these, I rotated some of these so that they would all touch. And remember, if you click on a selected object, again, you have access to the rotate handles, and you can move these triangles. I need to go back and take geometry, I guess. I didn't get much sleep last night. I'll blame it on that. So as you're moving these around, just make sure that they all connect. And then you can even resize some of the shapes if you don't like the shapes. But the idea is that at least every single object will intersect with another object. And that way, the software can figure out a path to have no jump stitches. So after those are changed, select it, click on Blackwork Run. And if you want to be specific about where the design should start, you can click on a point, and that will also apply Blackwork Run. Pressing enter lets the software decide. And for this final one, I'll click on Blackwork Run and click on a point. So this is our finished design, and it's ready to save. So I'm going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to call this Artwork Canvas Quilt Finished or Final, and save that. So if I go back to my PowerPoint, I'll show you the finished design again, and then if you have questions, you can ask questions. And so I did stitch the rectangle around the design first. I didn't use a basting frame. That rectangle that went around the outside of the design served as my basting frame that held all the layers together. And then all the dividing lines in the candle mat stitched next. And then finally, all the different quilting designs. So Megan, do I have questions?
Of course you have some questions.
Good.
I know. I love the colors of that project. It turned out really well. So I think we should start kind of towards the end with some of the last questions I got. So when talking about Blackwork Run, can Blackwork Run be used anytime to remove jump stitches for any design?
It can be used for outline designs,
Hmm.
but yes, on any kind of designs, if you create outlines in the embroidery canvas, you can use Blackwork Run.
Okay, and then do they need to group the object again before doing Blackwork Run?
No, no, you do not. The only reason I grouped the objects to begin with was to make them easier to select.
Hmm.
So they have to be ungrouped in order to apply Blackwork Run or in order to reshape or move or rotate. But I just had grouped them to make them easier to move and select all at once.
Okay. Um, okay, and then kind of talking about artwork canvas and just some of the possibilities. Someone is asking, they're very familiar with like Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, and they're wondering if designs in Adobe can be imported to artwork canvas.
Yes, and they have to be saved in a specific format.
Hmm.
But if I click on Insert Artwork, these are all the different formats. So Adobe Illustrator, these formats can be imported.
Perfect.
And
Um,
then I don't know, I'm not familiar with Adobe Illustrator, so any of these other formats that Adobe would work with, those could be used to import as well.
sure. Okay, and then we had, of course, quite a few questions just about kind of like the navigation of artwork canvas. Is the right click always for getting object properties?
And I'm not, a right click to get object properties.
Yeah, when you right click, is it always to get object properties? Is
No,
that like its primary?
oh no, if I draw a line here, the right click gives you a menu. It's not really object properties because object
Okay.
properties is over here as a tab. It's a docker. But a right click in Artwork Canvas is kind of like a right click in the embroidery canvas. It gives you a menu of options of
Mhm.
what you can do to the selected object. So whether it's convert to curves or group or ungroup, your options are going to be different based on what kind of object you have clicked on.
Mhm.
And like it is in the embroidery side, when I select an object and right click, it gives me a list of things that I can do with that object. It doesn't necessarily open up object properties. I have to go to object properties to actually get to the point where I can alter those properties. Now, a right click here down on a stitch will open up object properties, but we don't have anything that's equivalent on the artwork canvas side. And I just noticed I changed my, you got to be careful when you have something selected there because I just changed my quilt there. But anyway, so it is all going to depend on what kind of object you have, whether you have two objects selected, whether it's a blended object, a distorted object. That's going to give you choices based on the kind of object.
Okay. And now a couple questions just about the project. What kind of stabilizer did you use?
I did not use a stabilizer. I used batting as my stabilizer. So the batting was sandwiched in between the silk and the backing.
Okay.
And with this kind of design, a stabilizer isn't necessary.
Sure. Someone asked, did you mention the name of the fusible knit for the silk? Did you?
I use French Fuse. That's the brand I use. There are lots of different brands, but I really consider that to be one of the highest quality of knits fusible interfacings.
Okay. And someone said, with some designs, you have a lot of lines going through the same spot. How does the embroidery cope with the excess of stitches in the same spot, even with stabilizer?
I probably have more lines in this design than I did on my other one. Let me go back over and what the number of lines I had on my original stitched out fine, this probably is pretty intense. And you can, of course, reshape these before you apply Blackwork Run, but they can be reshaped and moved. Now these areas would be okay. It's this area that I might be concerned of, and I've got 3. Yeah, I've got too many lines. Let me open up. And in the handout, I had you reduce the lines. So now I have to remember which file I put it in. Okay. It's probably in this one. So it did fine with the number of crossovers that I had in this design. I mean, you could definitely tell, no, that's not the one that I finally used. So, okay, this is the one that I stitched. Okay. One thing I didn't mention that what is in the handout is after I applied Blackwork Run, I did change it to a single color. So it was just this one area that I had. And so this is, I had 10, but they weren't right on top of each other. I edited it a little bit so they wouldn't all be on top. But yeah, that's a good point. And that one that I did probably wouldn't do as well. So, but 10 lines did fine. But remember, you can reshape them to move them off a little bit so they aren't going all into the same needle penetration. The needle penetration isn't in the same spot.
And I'm trying to find one more good question here. Do you know of how to use, I don't know if this is a good one, but using Artwork Canvas with Mac, is that possible? Is the programming possible with that?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. And let's do one more here. Okay, regarding again, the final project, did you hoop all 3 layers together?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, last question. Did that design completely fit in the jumbo hoop? And if not, how many hoopings were necessary?
Okay, and this is in the handout as well. So what I did was rotate the hoop. So to rotate a hoop, and let me go ahead and you'll pick out your hoop size that you need, and then you'll go to the multi-hooping toolbox and you select the hoop, and then you rotate it with the rotate left. But it does fit within the hoop, but it has to be rotated. And that's the case for the maxi hoop as well as the mega hoop as well. Or you can select all the design and rotate the design. Either way, it's going to have to be rotated in order to stitch it out.
Sure. All right, well, I think that is a good wrap up for the questions there. Debbie, the CMX files for this will be posted with the webinar, correct?
Right, right.
Okay.
Because
So,
you
yes.
got them today to post, right?
Yes, yep, I got them.
Okay.
Yes, like we just discussed, this webinar is being recorded and it will post to bernina.com along with the handouts and the CMX files from this. So if there's something you want to look back on or something that you might have forgotten, it will be available for your use. So I think that's all I have. Debbie, anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We do have another broadcast at 3 o'clock Central Standard Time. So if you want to join that, you do have the registration link for that and you can join there as well. So with that, I think I will close it out.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you,
Yes.
everyone.
All
Have
right.
a good
Thanks,
day.
Debbie. Yep. Bye.
Bye.